Buenos dias, Gunners Collective TV. Back at it. You already know. Like a torta with some bad habits. Bye up, bye up. Let's get straight to that intro. Welcome back to the channel, and if you haven't already hit that like and subscribe button, make sure you go ahead and do that. Put your notification bell on all so that way you're directing the direction of the dope content that the gun stays kicking. I appreciate your support, man. I'm very humbled by it. So what do we have here? A free staff sues Chino State Prison for an alleged attack. Now, this allegedly happened to a free staff, a female that was walking inside a freezer unsupervised by correctional officers with an inmate. And according to her story, she was allegedly attacked. Her throat was cut. There's several abrasions along her jawline and her throat where a slashing device was used to subdue her. Okay. Now she alleges that she was targeted for an SA, basically a physical and an SA event. And, you know, it makes me wonder. I'm not saying that what she's saying is false, because she definitely has the scars and the wounds to prove that an altercation took place. She definitely has a cut on her throat to prove that it took several stitches to sew it up. And I'm sure she's traumatized for life. But at the same time, when we're talking about free staff, let me explain to you within the prison facilities, within county jail facilities, exactly what free staff are and what they do. Free staff is a contracted worker that works within the facility that has nothing to do with being a CO. They're not a cop. They're not a correctional officer. They're not trained that way. They're usually an electrician, a plumber, a doctor. Free staff usually work in the kitchen facilities like this woman worked. And for the most part, man, free staff they're not really attacked or no one really trips off them. In fact, there's been a lot of incidents. I don't want to really give up too much game, but let's just say free staff are utilized in certain ways, right? Or at least back in my days. I don't know how it is now, and I'm not going to put that on their plate, but to have a female free staff in a facility, she's going to be usually respected. You know, if they're cool, if they're just doing their job, you know, people will approach them with propositions. People will try to get at them, especially with this female. She doesn't seem like she's a very ugly female. So I'm sure there was guys trying to get at her. Now, I'm not going to say she was involved with inmates, but 9 times out of 10, when you got a female that looks halfway decent working the jail facility, whether she's a correctional officer, a free staff, even a chaplain to some point, or a sister, man, it's crazy, right? Dudes are going to try to holler. And a lot of these women fall susceptible to the game that these dudes are shooting. They see these dudes on the yard with their shirts off. You know, a lot of these women like a bad boy. They work in this facility. It's hard working around all these different men for them not to be approached and them not to fall for it. Now, I'm not saying that this woman fell for it, but she definitely was admired by this particular individual because he decided to snatch her up inside of a freezer. Now, she's suing Chino State Prison because she's saying that the correctional officers didn't do their job. She wasn't properly supervised. Now, my thing is, why would you even go in the freezer unsupervised with this inmate if you felt that the procedures and the protocol wasn't going on right? She could have waited and said, you know what, we need to wait. We need to get a hold of the CO first before we go up in there because this ain't proper protocol. You know, I'm not a fucking dummy. Okay, I've been in prison. I've seen a lot of things. And I could tell you there was reasons to be in the freezer unsupervised. Now, whether it worked out the way it was supposed to work out or it didn't, that's the story. Okay, now to blame these correction officers and say they weren't doing their job, let me explain to you. I've worked the kitchen in almost every facility, every prison I've ever been to, depending upon states, everywhere that I've been, I've worked the kitchen because the kitchen's a cold hustle. I always like the atmosphere of eating. I like to eat, right? And so there was ways to get extra food and extra tray, and it was a way to get out of my cell and be around, some of the homies. We all worked there, and it was just a cool atmosphere in comparison to being in a cell all fucking day or just sweeping the tier. Okay, so there's not very many jobs in prison that you can have. There's PIA in some prisons, and usually those are sold up. It's hard to get in the prison industry area. It's hard to get that. You got to have a lot of time, and at the same time, you got to know somebody to know somebody. It's kind of like, hey, everyone gets their homeboys in, and it's fucking hard. Okay, but to be a tier tender or to work the kitchen is pretty simple. Everyone signs up and everyone gets in. They're going to give everyone an opportunity. So that's why I kind of worked the kitchen. It was the easy way out, but at the same time, it was a cold hustle and there was food. There was always free staff in the kitchen. Free staff coordinate. They make the schedule for the food. They make sure that things are coming in. They pretty much know their way around that kitchen, the ins and outs. There's always 1 or 2 correctional officers assigned to the kitchen. Usually, there's one that walks the perimeter. He's walking around the kitchen, making sure that no shenanigans are happening, nothing's going on. And then there's usually one located inside an office, and he pretty much opens and closes the doors, makes sure that the kitchen is secure, that no one's getting out. Okay. They also have 2 or 3 officers when you're leaving most kitchens to check for any type of contraband, weapon stock, anything, food that you're not supposed to take back, whatever. But they're pretty lenient. Some of the prisons I've been in, they're pretty lenient. They'll let you take back food. They understand what's going on. They're not going to knock the hustle. They're not going to make it a big issue. Then there are some assholes that, sometimes they work the kitchen that's not really their post, but they work it that day, and not to fucking take no sugar and nothing back because that fool's going to snatch you up. He's playing super cop, right? It's just the way it is. Now, for the most part, everybody knows the free staff. Everyone's pretty cool with the free staff. Everyone tries to be cool with the free staff because that's the way you're able to wiggle. And most of the time, the free staff know what's going on. They know if there's some missing eggs or if there's some missing peanut butter or whatever, but they're not really tripping because they're not trying to rock the boat. As long as they don't have to, everything gets done, their job is done, they're good. They're making a shitload of money. They're good. Most free staff, especially doctors, nurses, things of that nature, are paid very well within the CDCR, right? So they're not going to try to get fired or not make a fucking big old deal out of some extra peanut butter that's missing at all. Now, I can tell you guys a little story. I remember being in Jamestown prison back in the days, right? And me and the homeboy had a hustle. We had Pruno going on. We were making prison wine. That was our thing. He was fucking, that motherfucker made prison wine like a native, right? He was good. I'm going to tell you, Native Americans and them woods, brother, they can make some wine, right? And he had taught me how to make wine, and we did it old school style with the sopa for the starch and the kicker, the patada. We were really doing it. That shit goes zzz when it's bubbling. You already know, man, right? As soon as that kicker hits, that motherfucker starts cooking. So our thing was sugar. That's always the thing with wine. You're trying to get as much sugar as you can. And they only sell a certain amount of sugar on, commissary or in your packages. So you need those jellies. Those jelly packets are a good source of sugar. You need whatever you can get. But we had to connect from a free staff that kind of not, I won't say was letting us do something, but turned a blind eye to it. Kind of just walked away, opened the dry storage and would walk away. And that was because the homeboy was having, I don't want to say an inappropriate relationship, but I'll just say they were close, right? They were getting close, or at least she was believing that they were getting close. Now she was a big one. You know what I'm saying? She was, have you ever seen Pee-wee's Playhouse? Remember Large Marge, the truck driver? Make a leg a high, make a hiney ho. That's how she looked, right? But the homie didn't care because as long as it meant sugar and a quick mamon, the winner was. So he was dealing with that. She would open the dry storage. I'd go in, sugared out the game. I had the spice. He had made these pants. He had so big, long pockets in. I'd put like plastic garbage bags in there. Fill that motherfuckers up with sugar. Legs this big. Looking like I had diabetes back then, right? Fat legs. But I always made it out, and we always had sugar, or we dip it off to the homies. Look, I'm not going to tell you every single way they do it because they're probably still doing it, but we did it. Now, she was cool. It was what it was. She ended up having an inappropriate relationship with this brother, man, this black dude, man. And black dudes be knocking him in there. That's facts, right? Some Crip dude, he knocked her from LA, and she ended up getting fired because of that. Kind of fucked our cha-cha up. But I didn't care because at that time I had already got off. I fought with the Southerner, and I went to to the oil. So then I heard about through the grapevine, like, hey, she ended up getting fired, whatever. Damn, that's fucked up. She was cool peoples. The thing is, this female working at Chino State Prison has filed a lawsuit. Okay. And what she's saying is that she walked another inmate, an inmate, into the freezer area, and she was immediately attacked by him. He tried to sexually assault her. Okay. She refused, and he cut her throat. And she's suing the state because she's saying that the COs weren't directly involved. They didn't do nothing. They didn't help her. Now, most free staff, unless this chick had just barely been working there and didn't know protocol, didn't know what was up, most free staff will alert the COs, hey, I'm going to be by myself over here. Keep an eye out, right? And most COs will walk to the door with them. But a lot of the free staff that have been there for a while, they're not tripping. They got the keys. They're just opening. They let you go in, grab what you got to grab, come back out. For her to be in that storage with them, either that guy was just waiting for an opportunity to catch her alone, or there was some other extracurricular activities that she was involved in. Okay? I'm not sitting here and saying that she's a liar and that she wasn't doing a little something extra, something a little strange for a piece of change, but for her to be in a private area where there's no cameras, where there's no one else could see, you go where you go in prison, meaning she knew the COs were not anywhere in sight. She knew that she was taking a risk going in there. You know, when you're around ex-convicts or convicts and you're working in a facility as a free staff, and again, I've never been a free staff, but I can only think, you know, especially for a woman, she has to be on her toes at all times. She has to be of an understanding that, you know, these guys are looking at her like a piece of meat. She's looked at differently. People are going to try to manipulate her. They're going to try to get over. They're going to try to hustle. And it just is what it is, because a man's mentality in a place like that is a woman is susceptible to anything. They've been broken down over time for so long that it's like, you know, it just is what it is. Now, whoever did this to this woman, it's an animal, right? But I'm not going to sit here and say that, you know, just cutting her throat and doing whatever he did, that's nothing good comes of that. I'm not going to condone that at all. That's a woman. You don't hurt women. You know, that was just fucking unnecessary. But it could have been something totally different, and she could be trying to cover her tracks. You know, I've been around a lot of staff prisoner relationships, and I've seen it many, many times. Now, I'm not saying this is what was going on here, but I read between the lines on a lot of shit. And sometimes, you know, just like in the free world where you see men and women arguing domestic issues, they're not getting along that day. They love me one day, hate me the next day. Same thing goes on in prison. You know, when dudes are involved with women, they cease to be free staff. They cease to be prisoner. They're now boyfriend and girlfriend or in a relationship. And so when you go that route, you have to understand that you're messing with a person that might not have nothing to lose, that if you anger him, he's going to go that extra distance. He's going to try to take you out. And I'm not saying that this is the situation here, but it seems kind of odd that she found herself alone with him for an extensive amount of time. And then this was able to occur. Because like I said, I've worked in the kitchens a lot. And look, it's not far-fetched to say that she just was gullible, didn't know, or just wasn't tripping and decided to walk in here with this guy, and he took an opportunity to attack her, right? Because it does happen. And that's what she's saying is happening. That's why she's suing the prison. But at the same time, there's officers there. And if she was doing it by protocol and doing it the way she was supposed to do it, she should have alerted that officer and been like, hey, I'm going in the freezer with this guy, slide through, watch me, whatever. And they would have did that because, you know, they look out for their fellow staff members, for the free staff and all that, right? So I could understand her situation where she feels she was attacked, and that definitely happened. And she feels that the prison was directly responsible for that. But at the same time, when you work a area, especially around prisoners, you have to be on your toes at all times. You know, I got a homeboy that's an ex-CO, and he tells me all the time that every day he went to work, he didn't know if he was going to make it. And there were certain areas that were blind spots that he'd always be very cautious in and whatever, because people will take the opportunities. You got to understand, there's a lot of gang members in prison that play by certain rules, right? And their rules are not going to be to attack a woman for sexual gratification, nothing like that. But then there's a lot of dudes from different group segments that don't care. Okay, they're doing live, they're doing a buku amount of time, Buck Rogers dates, and they will seize the opportunity along with the women to be aggressive because they believe that she wants them or that they have something to offer. And when the woman turns them down, or even the man to some point in women's facilities, right, then they feel some type of way. Then that aggressive nature comes out. It's unfortunate that this woman had to go through what she had to go through. And we'll see how this lawsuit works out. But they're going to look into you. When you create a lawsuit, you open yourself up to everything. That CDCR has good lawyers. They're going to want to know, unless they settle out, which is what might happen, but they're going to want to know exactly why you did not alert the CO, why you walked in that freezer alone with this man. And they're going to bring up old cases where there was staff and inmate relationships. And I'm not going to lie to you. When I first read this story, I was like, oh, she was fucking that dude. Right? That's just because I've seen it so many times. I know what time it is, but I feel for her as a victim. She shouldn't have to go through that as a woman, regardless if she was or not. You know, I remember a situation, quick one. I'm not going to tell you which facility because I'm just not going to tell you, right? But this particular prison was a dangerous prison. And I was in the gym area. I was housed in the gym. And this female, she was a punk, right? Punk rock. She treated everybody like shit. And there was a reason for that. And all these COs, these men COs, man, they worship the ground she walked on. This chick could not do no wrong in their eyes. And she used to come rip our beds off the fucking bunk. She'd spit on our stuff, rip picture, family photos, just the ultimate disrespect. And eventually she got laid out. Eventually she got ran over. She got hit plenty of times, right? But the whole time she's being like this, she was having an inappropriate relationship with two Southerners on that yard, two different dudes. Had them at odds. One of them got washed up behind her. I mean, this chick was just no joke. She was fucking every cop there, every dude. Like she was just garbage because she felt she had a certain element of power. See, some women and men are like that. When they get into a position of power, they don't know how to act. And this female acted like, you know, hey, I could do whatever I want. She used to tell us straight up, do anything, say anything to me. I'll have my boys come in here and smash you right to your face. You're just like, damn. And you feel like there's nothing you can do. I mean, you could always get off, but I mean, you're going to get smashed, possibly even unalived, right? So eventually she got took out, stretched out, and that's what that was. But, you know, I've seen these situations where these women are involved with these men. It doesn't work out and something bad happens. And then later on, it's like, oh, I wasn't doing nothing. I don't know. With this woman, I don't know if that's the case. I hope that she's well. I hope that her family's well. You know, I'd hate to sit here and disrupt her lawsuit and what she's got going on. You know, they'll probably settle out of court. She'll probably get some money. But again, a female, and I'm seeing the picture of her right here. She's not an ugly female. Okay. So there's no way that woman right there, you can't tell me that woman right there wasn't in there as a free staff and dudes wasn't trying to holler. You know, to say that she was involved with it, I don't know, but I've been in pretty much every prison I've been in. It's been cracking. I got a homeboy, man, from Merced County, from the jail. He knocked one of the nurses. They're married now. And she was a free staff, a nurse, and they're happily married with kids. She ended up losing her job behind it, but they've been together forever. I remember a situation where I couldn't even believe it, man. I didn't even know what was going on right under my nose, man. The homeboy had another cop. He had a CO, and it just was what it was. Shit happens. Anyways, man, this woman was attacked in Chino prison. Her throat was slashed and cut, and she claims that the prison is liable because they didn't help her when she needed help. But the thing is, she should have known better than to walk into a freezer with a convicted felon, because felonious shit is happening unless felonious shit was already happening, and, you know, an argument ensued. I don't know, man. I'm not here to back one player over the other. I'm just saying it's a crazy story and to tell you some stories. Thumbs up or thumbs down. Heavy's going to be the head that wears the crown. I'm going to continue to strive, struggle, and strive for what I truly believe in, and that's the betterment of all people. If you guys have a comment, leave a comment. What do you think? Do you think she was having an inappropriate relationship and she just got caught slipping? Or do you think that this fucking monster really attacked this woman because he didn't get what he wanted. Is the prison liable for it? Let me know. This video is sponsored by Barrio Liquors in Turlock, California. If you're in the Turlock Central Valley area, pull up to the Barrio and get you some icy and cold to drink. Bang, bang.